The Black Ledger, Chapter 1. The Body That Wasn't. The rain broke at dawn, like the city was trying to wash its face before anyone could name the stains. Neon bled into the puddles, scooters hissed past like shy meteors, and the alley on Trần Hưng Đạo steamed with a fishy heat that no monsoon could cool. I ducked under the police tape and showed my badge to the rookie guarding the mouth of the lane. He looked at the badge like it might bite him. "Detective Quang?" he asked. "That's the name on the tin," I said. "Anyone else inside? Just CSU and Lieutenant Hui. He said to send you back." "Of course he did," I muttered, and let the tape whisper against my shoulders as I slipped under. The alley opened into a pocket courtyard, where 4 buildings leaned in heavy with curiosity. Laundry hung like loose tongues. A cat stood on the cracked sill of a green door, tail swishing, staring at the dark scar on the concrete still wet, still trying to decide what color it wanted to be. The smell came first, the particular metallic tang of something that used to be someone, braided with petrol and fish sauce. My throat closed. I'd been to too many barbecues hosted by monsters. Hui stood near the stain, his pants rolled to keep them clean, his shoes not bothering. He had the tired face of a man who'd traded sleep for a mortgage and crimes. When he turned to me, the grin was too quick to be real. "Detective Lei Quang," he said. "They told me you'd make it." "I try to be punctual for the dead," I said. "Where is he?" "He is in the back of a van now, but you can see where he used to be." He gestured to the dark oval, to the splatter near the brick wall, where heat had kissed it into a crescent. "Neighbors called it in at 4:08. Said they smelled fire, then heard nothing." "Nothing?" He shrugged. "Sometimes nothing is louder than a scream." I crouched. The stain tracked toward the door. The door itself was soot-kissed but intact. CSU had already placed evidence flags, one near a twisted belt buckle, one where something had fused to the concrete and had to be chipped off in clumsy bites. Near the wall, a small square of something pale had survived, half-melted a tile maybe, or a plastic card. "ID?" I asked. "Name is Nguyen Duc Cuong," Hui said. "Accountant for Ondoong Development, lives 2 blocks away. No one saw him arrive, no burns on the doorframe, no accelerant tracks leading out. CSU says the burn pattern is strange." "Strange how?" "The kind you get when someone knows exactly what they're doing." I rocked back on my heels. "He was burned here." "Here," Hui said, "and not for long. Controlled, focused, then extinguished." "Fire extinguisher?" He nodded toward a red cylinder on its side by the trash bins. The gauge was smashed, foam crusted around the nozzle like spittle. "We found it in the bin, wiped clean. But they missed something." He motioned for me to follow, and we walked to the bins, where a CSU tech in a white suit and tired eyes lifted a clear evidence bag. Inside lay a strip of black tape with a torn edge. Embedded in the adhesive were little silver flakes. "Aluminum?" I asked. "Maybe," the tech said. "Maybe micro-shavings, maybe patience. We'll know later." I looked back at the stain, at the way the alley held its breath around it. Where did he work? And his men? "Ondoong's district office," Hui said. "He audits their subsidiaries." "He was working late," his neighbor says. "He came home around midnight with a bag, left around 3 without it." "What kind of bag?" "Leather, black. The neighbor says he carries it when he brings work home." "Let me guess," I said. "It hasn't turned up." Hui's smile cut sideways. "You still remember how to do this." I didn't tell him what I remembered most. The case that had eaten my nights. The one with the matchstick men and the drowned tenement. the one that burned so bright it turned my shadow into a second self. That case had ended without an end. They took my badge for 30 days and offered me therapy. I took neither well. Now the badge was a heavy coin in my pocket again, and the city was a book I couldn't stop rereading. "Where's the family?" I asked. "Wife's in the flat." She identified him. "Or what she could," Huey said softly. "We're letting her sit." She said he kept a ledger at home, old-fashioned, said he wrote everything by hand, said it calmed him. "Is it there?" "Hey." Huey's mouth flattened. "If it is, it's hiding." We climbed the stairs to the second floor, the hallway lined with shoes like a little graveyard. The door to Kuong's flat was open, the kind of open that felt like an apology. Inside, a woman sat on a bamboo chair with her hands folded tight enough to make her knuckles pale. Her face was dry, but her voice had been weeping. You could hear the hoarseness when she answered the social worker's soft questions. Her hair was tied back in a knot that said practicality, not beauty. A child's watercolor dangled from the fridge, 2 stick figures, and a boxy house and a sun with too many rays. "Mrs. Nguyen," Huey said gently. "This is Detective Lay. He's going to help us understand what happened." I stepped forward. "I'm sorry," I said. "There was nothing else that mattered first. I have to ask you some questions. I'll make them as short as I can." She nodded. "He said he was going to the office, even though it was late," she whispered. "He said he forgot something important. He took the small bag, the black one." I asked, "What is more important than sleep?" He said, "Something that will make us sleep later." "What did he mean by that?" I asked. "I thought he meant money," she said. "Shame wearing a mask. I told him to be careful. He said he would call me when he got there. He didn't." "Did he keep a ledger here?" I asked. "A notebook where he wrote things by hand?" She stared at me. Then slowly she stood and walked to the bookshelf near the TV. She pulled at the spine of a cookbook, and the shelf's backboard clicked, tilted a centimeter. With both hands, she lifted the board out. Behind it, in a dark cubby, sat a slim black notebook bound in leather, a fountain pen with a gold nib, and a packet of crisp, new memo pads. Huey and I glanced at each other. CSU's tech stepped forward, gloved, careful. He photographed, then lifted the notebook into a bag. "I never looked," she said. "I respected it. He told me not to touch it. He said it was a habit from school. He said things he wrote by hand stayed true." "Did he say he wrote work things in it?" I asked. She hesitated. He said the ledger was for the things that couldn't be entered on a computer." I felt the prickle at the base of my skull. The city had a lot of categories for those kinds of things. We left her with her sister, who arrived with a bag of oranges and nothing helpful to say. Hoy and I stood in the hallway under a flickering bulb, the notebook a new weight in evidence. Outside, the alley had found a breeze. The cat had moved on to more interesting problems. "Take it to the lab?" Huey asked. "Not yet," I said. "If this ledger is half what it might be, I'd like to know what we have before the chain of custody grows a political branch. Who else knows about it?" "Me, you, Tam from CSU," Huey said, jerking his chin toward the tech. "And the widow." "Good," I said. "Then we have exactly 4 fewer leaks than usual." "Hey, Hidden Eyes," he snorted. "You want to read it now?" "Somewhere that doesn't smell like the inside of a dragon's lung," I said. We chose a tea stall 2 blocks away with a broken awning and a view of the alley's mouth. The owner, a woman with arms like bamboo poles and a stare like an X-ray, poured us black tea that tasted like old conversations. Huey set the evidence bag on the table like a holy book, and slid it open with a custody blade. I put on gloves and opened the ledger. The first pages were neat columns of expenses: rice, milk, school fees, a refrigerator repair. Then the handwriting switched, a sharper tilt. Dates lined the left margin. On the right, names, not names, exactly initials and numbers, each followed by a quaint phrase or symbol. B17 dove in blue envelope, I read. T4 turtle, Northgate, 5 past. A 19 red stamp, 3. What is this? Huey asked. Codes, I said. Personal cipher. He'd have a key in his head, maybe in the bag he carried. We turned the page. More of the same, more initials and birds and stamps and gates. His lines were almost art. On the 5th page, the handwriting pressed darker, the nib digging into the paper like a warning. He'd written a single icon, a square within a square, a little hatch mark at each corner. Beneath it, a phrase in English, the black ledger. Huey exhaled. I've heard whispers, he said. Journalists talk. Politicians dream of burning the whisperers. But I thought it was just a story you tell your cousin at a wedding, something to make him stop asking for a loan. What did you hear? Did you hear that there was a book somewhere that held all the debts no one wanted anyone to count, he said. Kickbacks, hush money, the price of a vote's shadow. I heard it belonged to no one, and everyone, moved like smoke, got copied and never seen. I heard it turned men into ghosts and ghosts into mayors. I heard something else, I said. I heard someone tried to make their own. You think this is his copy? I think someone burned a man who knew how to make one. He yapped, okay. A shadow fell across the table. The tea stall owner had returned, her eyes traveling to the black book, then back to our faces with the smooth calm of someone who has learned to notice only what she can't be blamed for. She set down a plate of rice cakes we hadn't ordered. On the house, she said, and left us with their sweet, shy smell. Huey's phone buzzed. He glanced down. Forensics, he said. They finished the preliminary. The accelerant's a blend gasoline cut with a fish sauce base. Explains the smell, I said. More than that, Hoy added. It's a popular trick in illegal cremations in the countryside. Fish sauce base burns long and steady at the right mix without flame dancing too high. Masks odors, a farmer's solution to a city problem. Whoever did it learned the recipe before they moved to the city, I said. Or learned to hire. We paged through the ledger. Date, code, symbol, date, code, symbol. Then, near the middle, a clump of pages where the ink lightened, as if the pen had been running dry. In that pale stretch, handwriting shifted again, nervous, with little tremors at the edges. The dates were this month. The codes resolved into actual names once or twice, but faint, as if he'd written the truth and then tried to bury it in shy ink. Look here, I said, tapping a line. Huey leaned in. Dung Fat Orchid on the 9th. You know him? Contractor. Builds roads the way magicians build rabbits, Huey said. Always new, always furry. Always with a trick you can't see until it's late. Another line, LN. Green Lantern, Tower 31. My skin tightened. Leg Ngiep, councilman. I'd watched him laugh at a fundraiser in a suit that fit him like a lie. Tower 31 is in Tu Tiem, Huey said. The new development, I said. An Duong's flagship. We closed the ledger as a child ran past with a kite made from a plastic bag, its tail a string of receipts. The kite rose, dipped, got free. tangled briefly in the charge lines above the alley, then flew on anyway, defiant and ugly, a city bird. "Where was Kuhn going at 3?" Huey asked, voice soft with the kind of hunger that isn't food. "To deliver a page to someone," I said, "or to beg someone to erase it." "Which page?" "Whichever one has his own name on it." We bagged the ledger and walked back toward the alley. The rookie looked queasy and impressed that we'd gone to drink tea with evidence. He moved the tape. As we stepped under, a scooter buzzed past, 2 riders in black raincoats despite the rain's retreat. The one on the back turned his head. Under the helmet's dark visor, his stare held for a heartbeat too long, the way a music note sometimes hangs where the composer forgot to tell it to stop. Then they were gone. "You have a fan club," Huey said. "I'm not selling shirts," I said. We found the CSI van and asked for the bag that had come with Kuang's body. The tech, Tam, opened a drawer and slid out a sealed evidence bag containing what remained of a black leather satchel. The tool marks at the zipper told the story. Someone had gone through it with a pair of pliers and a hurry. "Contents?" I asked. "Burned and soaked," Tam said. "We found the frame of a USB drive, melted. Some paper ash caked with foam. You'll get the report." "Any chance of recovering data?" Huey asked. Tam scratched his cheek under the hood. "If the drive's controller burned before the chips, maybe. But it looks like someone wasn't counting on our prayers." We signed for the bag and left. My phone vibrated as we hit the sidewalk. The number was unknown. The city's favorite. I answered. "Detective Lay," a woman said, her voice pitched low, her vowels polished somewhere expensive. "You're looking for someone who doesn't want to be found." "Every day," I said. "Today it's me," she said. "Bring the ledger to the May Hotel, room 1203. Come alone." "And if I don't?" "He had don't of did." "You'll learn a new word for regret," she said, and hung up. "Who?" Huey asked. "Someone who knows how to buy a room with a view," I said. "We should call this in," he said. "We should at least bring backup and a suit that doesn't scream undercover cop at a business lunch." "Backup makes rats recalculate," I said. "We go quiet." "We?" He raised a brow. "You have the world's most boring tie," I said. "It will comfort her," he sighed. "Fine. But we take the long way and we cross the river with people who could kill us with a stare if we bumped their coffee. Head!" Blade Raff too prized. The May Hotel was all clean glass and smiles, the kind of place where the elevators whisper and the lobby smells like citrus guilt. We took an elevator with a bellhop whose posture could shame saints and rode to 12. Room 1203 was at the end of a carpeted hall that felt like the inside of a polite mouth. Plush, red, hushed. I knocked. The door opened on a chain. One gray-green eye peered out, considering. Then the chain slid and the door swung wide. She was in her 30s, maybe, with hair the color of espresso and a face that had been taught by someone unsentimental to give nothing for free. Her black dress was the kind that looked simple until you realized simplicity had been purchased in careful seams. She glanced at Huey, weighing him like a coin, and then at the evidence bag in my hand. "You brought it," she said. "Good." "And you are?" I asked. "A friend of a friend," she said. "Call me Lin." Huey closed the door behind us. I put the evidence bag on the glass coffee table and did not sit. Lin did, folding into the sofa with the sort of ease that says, "Practice." She gestured. "Please." "We're fine," I said. "You said you knew about this." "I said bring it," she said. "Knowing is different. Knowing is why we lock doors. You called me, Miss Lin, I said. I'm here. Earn the tea. She looked at me the way a mathematician looks at a hard problem before deciding to be kind to it. Your victim, the accountant, worked for Andung, she said. Andung builds towers where rivers once remembered how to be rivers. They do not like to be audited. They especially do not like to be audited by men who believe paper can be a bomb. Is that what this is? Hui asked, tapping the bag. It is a fuse, she said. The bomb is the copy. The copy of what? The Black Ledger, she said, and gave me a look that was part apology, part challenge. The original is a myth. People tell each other to remind themselves that sins have a memory. Copies are the jokes the myth plays on the living. Little books, little files, half true, half trap. Enough to scare, not enough to burn the whole house. I glanced at the window. 12 stories down, scooters swarmed at a light like fish around a sudden shadow. A billboard across the street offered a laugh on a woman's face, larger than any grudge. Why call us? I asked. Because someone wants this one, she said, and because someone else wants whoever holds it to stop breathing. I like it when the first someone's letter arrives before the second someone's knife. You're between them, I said. I'm between everything, she said, with a rueful smile that made me want to check my wallet. I broker. I carry whispers between mouths that don't want to know what they said. I arrange trades for things that cannot exist. I am also a patriot. You sell secrets and call it patriotism, Hui said, dry. I sell secrets to the person who might best keep the city from exploding, she said. Sometimes the person is poor. Sometimes the person is cruel. I am not a priest. I am a filter. And who are the two someones? I asked. She sighed. You know one of them, the one who wants the ledger, is a man who owns cranes and ministers. His son races cars on Keycon and never looks in the mirror. His initials are P. Day. The other is not a man. Not anymore. Not anymore? Not after they burned, she said softly. You think your victim was the first flame in this story? I'm sorry, detective. He was a match. The fire started 3 months ago when a man named Tom vanished after telling a journalist he had a map of the city's bribes. He was found in the river with coins in his mouth. Why, coins. So the dead boatmen don't ferry snitches, Hui murmured, old superstition sliding into his voice. Lin's gaze flicked to the ledger. Your man, the accountant, drew his own map. He thought he could sell it. He asked me to find a buyer. I told him to throw it in the river. He did not listen. That is the stubbornness of men who think numbers are spells. Who was the buyer? I asked. She looked away. I wouldn't tell you if I knew, but I didn't find one. Someone else did. Someone with a pocket big enough to hold a building. Andung, Hui said. Lin tilted her head in a little shrug that said, yes and no, and how would I know? I am merely a humble smuggler of truths. Then her eyes sharpened. I called you because if the city is going to survive this, it needs someone to pull the fuse carefully, which is not the same as cutting it. And what do you want? I asked. To stay alive, she said, and to watch the right people be afraid. Botting. I opened the evidence bag and slid the ledger out. Lin leaned forward as if smelling it. He wrote with a Japanese nib, she said absently. Men who like control like such nibs. You knew him, I said. I knew his type, she said. He thought the city could be balanced like an equation. He never learned that equations depend on what you decide to ignore. Tell us where to start, I said. You called us because you know a road that isn't on the map. She smiled. There's a market tonight in Chợ Lớn where people buy spices that don't exist, she said. In the back of the spice seller's stall is a room where a man counts envelopes. He works for people who like to be paid to look away. He has a scar on his left eyebrow where a cigarette once rested. He can introduce you to the person who introduced your accountant to danger. And if he won't, then you will show him a picture, she said, which I will send you, and you will say a name which I will not say here. Why not? She stood, suddenly, as if someone else had entered the room without a body. She crossed to the window and stared down. In the glass, her reflection split into two, doubled by the angle. Because this room has a twin, she said. Because this hotel has thieves for architects. My skin pulled tight again. Before I could speak, Hui moved to the door and checked the peephole. 2 men in the hall, he said. They looked like they came to apologize for a debt they didn't incur, and they smell like the oil on a gun. So, Lin reached into a drawer and came out with a photograph. She handed it to me. It showed a man in his 50s, paunchy, a face you could lose in a crowd, sitting at a table with an array of brown envelopes like little shy houses. His eyebrow scar was a small, white bar of penance. "Tell him this name," she said, and leaned close, her breath tea and something floral. She whispered the name into my ear. It wasn't a name that belonged to the city, it was older. A story name. A name you told when you wanted to make shadows think twice. It made the tiny hairs on my arms salute. "Again," I said. She repeated it. It felt like a code word disguised as a myth. "Down the service stairs," she said, suddenly brisk. "You'll meet a man with a cart full of towels. He will be humming. Give him your room key. He will walk down the hall and stop in front of this door like he's confused. Your friends in the hall will step toward him. That is when the fire alarm will go off. Walk in the other direction." How Hui began. "I told you," she said, eyes smiling with a tired wickedness. "I arrange." We moved. The service stair smelled like soap and old apologies. Halfway down, a siren began to pulse, soft at first, then growing bolder like a singer finding her courage. The sprinkler systems thumped. In the stairwell, a bloom of white noise rose. A man-made rain. We passed the towel cart man, who was, yes, humming an old folk tune about a man who loses his hat and finds a wife. He nodded to us as if we were room service. On the second-floor landing, we paused, listening to the hallway sound shift into chaos, the sound of expensive shoes learning to swim. Outside, the air was clean and a little triumphant. We walked 2 blocks before Hai let out the breath he'd been holding since the 12th floor. "You believe her?" he asked. "I believe she believes she's right," I said. "That's more useful than believing she's good." He looked at the ledger under my arm like it was a child I'd decided to raise without telling him. "What do you think the word means?" he asked. "The name," she whispered, I asked. "I think it means we have a bigger problem than a dead accountant. We decided to chase the market first. The sun crept higher, made promises it wouldn't keep. We got in my car, a sedan that rattled at speeds it never achieved, and drove toward Chợ Lớn, the city unspooled in market colors. Tarps, umbrellas, fake Gucci, real sweat. I put the ledger on the back seat under a mess of newspapers that had already lied enough to be useful. "Do you ever think about leaving?" Hui asked. "Like moving? Like doing anything that doesn't involve phrases such as Green Lantern Tower 31, he said. I watched a street vendor flip bansheo with the wrist of a magician, watched oil glitter like secrets. "I tried leaving," I said. "The city sent me postcards. The market was a country inside a city, a tangle of alleys and tents and smells that moved in layers: star anise, cardamom, sweat, plastic, river, smoke. We threaded through it with the half-shuffle of men pretending not to be looking for something. The spice seller's stall was near the back, a cave of colors. Glass jars winked like unblinking eyes. The man behind the counter was thin and not in a romantic way. His left eyebrow wore a cigarette's lesson. I slid the photograph across the counter. He glanced at it, then at me, then at the ledger-shaped bulge under my coat. He did not look at Huey, which told me he'd already saved his face in case anyone asked later. "We're closed," he said, as three women behind me argued over saffron like it was love. "We only need the room in the back," I said. He blinked slowly. "That room is for counting. We came to count," I said. Then I said the name Lynn had whispered. Everything in the stall held still for a second, as if the market itself had decided to take a breath. The man's eyes flicked to the curtain behind him, then back to me. "Where did you hear that name?" he asked. "In a hotel where the air smelled like lemons," I said. "Lemons can be peeled," he said, voice flat. "Then let's talk before someone peels you." He slid the curtain aside. The room beyond was small, metal table, single bulb like a lonely thought. On the table, envelopes had begotten more envelopes. He, Saturday, we did not. He gestured at the empty chair, offended by our stubbornness. "What do you think you know, detective?" He was seated at age. "I think you introduce men like our dead accountant to men who make problems evaporate," I said. "I think you take a fee. I think sometimes you double sell a secret because you can't remember if you already sold it." He smiled, ugly and honest. "And what do you think the name is?" "I think it's a password," I said. "I think it opens a door inside a man's head." He chuckled. "You make me old, detective. That name is a story we told when we were boys to scare ourselves into growing up. It is also a sign. It tells me the person who sent you is more dangerous than you." "Good," Huey said. "We brought only 2 bullets each, so we needed a friend." "His?" "The man, no. I needed to stop calling him that. He had a name. Whether or not I deserved it, he said, 'Call me Oncoy.'" "Smoke," I said. He shrugged. "I was a firefighter once. Now I watch different fires." "Introduce us," I said. "To whom?" "To the person who arranges markets for bribes," I said. "To the one who offered to buy the ledger." "I do not need to introduce you," he said, and looked past us. They already arrived. We turned. The curtain fluttered. 2 men stood there, men with shoulders like cabinets and faces like doors. Behind them, a third man blocked the alley slit. They held nothing, but the room contained a sudden abundance of potential weapons. The taller one nodded at Oncoy. "Old man," he said, "our boss wants his book." "Many men want to be bosses," Oncoy said, but his joke was tired. His fingers twitched on the envelope he'd been smoothing. The taller one looked at me, looked at Huey, saw the detective in our shoes. "You're walking out with something that belongs to a family that doesn't like to share," he said. "We can help you forget how." Huey sighed. I knew I should have worn a better tie. I took a slow breath. The market pressed in outside. Somewhere, someone laughed at a joke that had a chicken in it. The thin bulb above us buzzed like a small nervous animal. "Tell your boss," I said, "that if the book belongs to him, he should be careful who he tells that story to. Because there are other men telling the same story with their own names in the blank space. And there's only so many books the city can pretend not to read." He took a step forward. The room felt suddenly too small for air. I was preparing to introduce his face to the table when Onkoi did something I didn't expect. He reached under the table and pulled a cord. An alarm shrieked. Not a polite hotel chirp, an old metal scream that told the market the gods had teeth. Sprinklers coughed. Water fell in a miserable glitter. The men stumbled, surprised. Hui moved. I moved. The ledger pressed against my ribs like a living thing. The bulb popped. Darkness found us. When the light returned dim, gray, the color of a room after it learns a secret, the men were gone. The curtain swayed. Outside, the market had changed its song. Fear had entered the melody, made it quicker. You pulled the alarm, I said to Onkoi. He smiled. It looked painful. Fire knows me, he said. Sometimes it owes me a favor. Why help us? Hui asked. Because the name you said belongs to someone who used to come to my stall, he said. His eyes were shining with a wet that had nothing to do with sprinklers. He bought cinnamon for his wife, even when she told him to save his money. He believed the city could be better than the stories we tell. And because he died 3 months ago with coins in his mouth. Tom, I said. He flinched like the word had teeth. Go, he said. Go before the market remembers to be brave again. We went. The market pressed against us, then peeled away, then closed behind. Outside, the rain had considered a return and decided against it. The sky was the color of an old bruise. Now what? Hui asked. Now we read the ledger again, I said, and we find the line that breathes. And we visit a tower with a green lantern. We drove to Thu Tiem as the city learned to be afternoon. The new towers gleamed like expensive lies. The river below them looked patient, like something that could wait a century to be right. Tower 31 rose clean, glass and virtue, the kind of building that hired a perfume to walk in its lobby. In front of it, a small lantern on a maintenance hook hung oddly, painted a perfect green. A joke, a dare. Subtle, Hui said. We went inside. The lobby guard studied our faces, studied our clothes, decided we were someone else's problem if we were anyone's. The elevator sang in the language of money. The 31st floor was unfinished, raw concrete with plastic draped like staged humility. A cough of construction dust hung in the air, the kind that moves in when ambition leaves windows open. At the end of the hall, a door. Not a normal door, thicker, newer, a different paint. We approached. There was no peephole. I looked at Hui. He shrugged. I knock the way you knock when you already know you're not supposed to. Silence answered at first. Then the sound of bolts sliding. The door opened. The room was white, too white, medical white. A table, a chair, a woman in a lab coat counting stacks of paper with the briskness of a nurse counting pills. She looked up, unsurprised. You're late, she said. For what? I asked. For the audit, she said, and tapped the paper. The numbers don't add. We're detectives, Hui said. And I'm a figment, she said, and smiled. Call me Dr. Mai. Doctor of what? I asked. Patterns, she said. I work for a small office tasked with making sure big offices remember what numbers are. She lifted a page, held it to the light. Let us see the watermark that wasn't a watermark at all. A symbol, faint square within a square, hatch marks like little compass points. The black ledger's sign. How did you get that? I asked. She met my eyes and gave me the look of a person who had seen men with weapons and men with briefcases and had learned which one frightened her more. I audit for the ministry, she said. Once in a while, someone gives us a page we didn't ask for. Once in a while, that page has a ghost on it. We decide whether to exorcise it or to pretend it was a draft of a poem. "And which is this?" Hui asked. She looked down at the stack, at the pale symbols dancing like careless saints. "This is a choir," she said, "and it is very out of tune." A sound cut her words in half. A slap of a switch. The lights died. A hum rose the building's swallowed breath. Emergency strips brightened along the floor, thin and eerie. The door we had entered whispered shut behind us. The room felt suddenly like a lung. "Generator failure," Hui said, but too quickly. He didn't believe himself. "No," I said, "not failure. Choice." The emergency strips began to blink. A soft code: 3, pause, 2, pause, 3. Dr. Mai's face had gone pale in the emergency light. She looked older. She looked like she wanted to run in a direction that didn't exist. "What does that code mean?" I asked. "It means the building has a fire in its mouth," she said. She gathered the stack of papers like a mother grabbing a child and looked at me, at Hui, with an expression I had seen at crossroads in villages where the road runs out and becomes something that remembers being a road. "We have to go." We turned toward the door. The handle was hot. Not burned skin hot, warning hot. I pulled my hand back. "Back way?" Hui asked. Dr. Mai nodded toward the wall. "Maintenance access," she said. "Behind the panel." "Locked?" I asked. "Probably," she said. "But locks are for people who don't have ledgers." She reached under the table and produced a flat metal key, the universal language of men who think they own walls. She jimmied the panel. It swung inward to reveal a narrow passage, concrete spine, steel ladder. Hot air breathed out at us, like the exhale of a dragon who had learned patience. "I'll go first," I said. I went. The ladder vibrated with news I didn't want. Hui followed, then Dr. Mai. The air grew hotter. My shirt stuck to my back like a second skin that had changed its mind. Below us, a clatter of footsteps. Above us, the metal ping of expansion and regret. We came out into a maintenance corridor on the 30th floor. The emergency strips blinked. A sign pointed toward stairs that I did not trust and an elevator that I trusted less. Smoke licked the far end of the corridor, thin tongues tasting the air. Somewhere, a siren argued with itself. We ran. Behind us, the panel we'd forced shut side open like a mouth in its sleep. We hit the stairwell door. It opened onto a well that was not yet a chimney. Down we went, 3 flights, 5. On the 25th, we heard voices above, men moving fast, organized, not panicked. We ducked into a corridor, pushed through to a construction area where tarps billowed like sails on a ship built by liars. "Here," Dr. Mai said, pointing to a gray door unmarked. It opened onto a service elevator that innocent people were not supposed to know about. It hummed a brave, small hum. We stepped in. I hit the ground button. The doors closed. For a second, nothing happened. Then, miracle, it moved. As we dropped, the power flickered again. The elevator stopped between floors, juddered, decided to continue. Like courage, summoned late but not too late, we reached the parking level, and the doors opened to a concrete cave that smelled like tires and the secrets of men who owned too many suits. We rushed toward the exit ramp. At the top of the ramp, a man stood, his silhouette hard against the bright. He did not hold a gun. He held a phone. He lifted it, took a picture, and then walked away. "That was a message," Hui said, breathing hard. "Everything is a message," Dr. Mai said, "including silence." We emerged into air that tasted less cooked. Sirens bit the street. A security guard ran past in a direction that said he would quit tonight. Across the river, the city looked the same, which was the trick it loved best. Dr. Mai handed me the stack of papers. "You'll be hunted for that," she said. "I'm used to being unpopular," I said. "Not like this," she said. "You think the ledger is a thing. It's not. It's a mirror. People will try to smash it. The pieces will be worse. We'll wear gloves," Hui said. She looked at me, searching my face for the part that would say the thing that would make this easier. I had nothing. She sighed. "There's a name," she said. "At the bottom of each page, faint. Like a watermark you only see when you are very unlucky. I thought it was the printer's mark. It's not. It's a signature." "Whose?" I asked. She looked like a woman about to push a child from a burning house and ask the sky to catch it. "I don't know who they are now, but I know who they were. It's a pseudonym our office uses internally when we need to mark a file to mean, 'Do not let this be seen by anyone who can make a phone call that ends with a dinner.' It's a name from an old folk tale." She pressed her thumb to the top page, rubbed, held it to the light. I squinted. The emergency sun found a pale ghost of letters at the bottom margin, a name emerging like a drowned thing lifting its face for one last look. I read it. I didn't say it out loud. Dr. Mai nodded. "Whoever wrote this has friends who can make doors open without keys," she said, "and enemies who can lock the sky." "Can you trace the printer?" Hui asked. "If I'm alive tonight," she said. I looked at the name again. It stirred things in me I remembered from fairy tales told on porches in towns where the river is a god with grudges. It was also, I realized, familiar in a way that was not mythical at all. "Where did you first see that pseudonym?" I asked Dr. Mai. "In internal memos," she said. "Years ago, before your case with the drowned tenement, before you were suspended. We thought it was a joke someone in the ministry liked. We thought it meant, 'Don't ask.' We said goodbye to Dr. Mai at the corner where taxis pretend to be accidents waiting for a story. She disappeared into one. The papers under my arm warmed like a living thing finding a chest to sleep on. Hui and I stood, shoulders touching without meaning to. "I think we just made someone's list," he said. "I've been on lists," I said. He shook his head. "Not a list a man writes in a notebook, a list a city keeps under its tongue." We drove to my office, the one the department pretends doesn't exist when the budget committee asks, a fan turned in the ceiling like a lazy threat. I spread the pages on the desk, turned on a lamp, let the light find the pale signatures again. The symbol square within square ghosted up from the paper like a conversation between geometric ghosts. We worked for an hour, maybe two, marking lines, cross-referencing, building a tree on the whiteboard that sprouted names and initials like nervous fruit. In the ledger, dates lined up like marching men. Money flowed like a river illegally rerouted. I could feel the pattern trying to introduce itself, shy, then bolder, then I saw it. "Look," I said. "Every third entry in any month connects to a council contract, but the delivery markers don't line up with the city meeting calendar. They line up with something else." "What?" Hui asked, already halfway to seeing it. "Ceremonies," I said. "Public blessings, ribbon cuttings, which means the pages were meant to be read by someone who attends those." Hui frowned. "Councilman Leng attends them all, and he gives red lanterns as gifts," I said. "But our ledger says green lantern." Hui stared at the board and then at me. "Green means go. It means go to the tower when it's unfinished," I said. "It means go when there are fewer eyes." And today the tower learned to burn, Huey said. We stepped back. The room hummed. The fan in the ceiling kept breathing for the building. On the bottom of a page, the pale pseudonym watched us like a patient ghost. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. A picture. It showed the room we had just left in Tower 31, white and clean and waiting for a new script. In the middle of the room, on the table, was the ledger. I looked at our desk. The ledger lay open where I had left it, stubbornly present. Another picture arrived. This time, the room was my office. This room. The angle was from up near the fan, a bird's view, a spider's. It showed me and Huey standing in front of the board with our tree of names, and it showed something else, something I hadn't noticed until it was framed for me by someone who liked to hurt people with honesty. On the whiteboard, in the right margin, where my hand had wandered while I thought, I had written a number from muscle memory, my badge number. Huey saw it at the same time. He turned slowly, as if speed could make a lie kinder. The fan clicked. The room's air changed weight. Another message pinged. No picture this time, just a line of text. Hello, detective. I waited until you could see your name. I looked at the ledger. I looked at the pale pseudonym on the page, the one that had felt familiar in the way old music feels familiar. I looked at my badge number on the board, accidental and not. Outside, the city made a sound like a coin, dropped in a well too deep for wishes. My phone vibrated again. This isn't a book, the message said. It's a map, and you're the compass. Chapter 2, The City That Kept the Receipt. The phone vibrated again, and I watched the words swim up as if they'd been drowned and pulled back too late. You're the compass. Huey's jaw worked. We need to kill the eye in here, he said, already moving a chair under the fan, already up on it with a pocket knife, already unscrewing a decorative cap on the bracket. He was a father of 2 and a husband of 1 and a cop by accident. He knew his way around small lies that hide in big rooms. The cap came away to reveal a pinhead camera the color of apology. He pinched the wire and popped it. The room blinked and then relaxed, like a man whose secret had been found out and decided not to fight. Ceiling, Huey said, peering along the molding. Vent grill, light switch. Your desk, He knelt by the baseboard and fished out a black wafer too smooth to belong to this building. Microphone, he said. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo of a street corner outside my office, the shot framed as if by a patient sniper. The caption said, "Turn right." I put the phone face down on the desk. The ledger lay open, the pale watermark signature on the bottom of the page like a whisper under a roar. Dr. Mai had said it was a pseudonym pulled from an old folk tale. The shape of the letters nagged at me, like a tune I used to hum in a house that no longer existed. Compass, I said. He wants to watch which way I point. He? Huey said. Or she. Or a pronoun that learned to walk, I said. Either way, we feed the magnet the wrong pole. I called Lynn. She answered on the second ring, as if she'd been rehearsing being surprised. You were followed to the hotel, I said. I am always followed, she said lightly. It saves me time teaching people where I am. They're in my ceiling, I said. Of course they are. You have very talkative ceilings, she said. I once knew a ceiling so honest it confessed to rain. I need a favor, I said. 3, actually. 1. Send 2 men with shoulders like cabinets to Tower 31's lobby with a briefcase they are very bad at hiding. 2. Send a woman in a red dress who looks like a press officer to the market where Ong Koi sells kindness. 3. Send a text message to a number I will give you in a minute that says, Dove, in blue envelope at 5 past. She was silent for a beat. You're going to the post office, she said. I'm going to make someone think we're going to the post office, I said. And where will you actually go? Turtle Lake, I said. North Gate, 5 past. Of course, she murmured. There are some stories even the clever forget to unlearn. You do know a compass works because it surrenders. Then I'll give it something else to bow to, I said. Do your part, we'll do ours. She hung up after promising me nothing and implying the opposite. Huey studied the ledger again, toe-tapping. B-17 dove in blue envelope, he read out. Central Post Office. Turtle, North Gate, 5 past Ho Con Rua. The North Gate of the roundabout, 5 minutes past something. 5 past the hour, I said. Dead drop time. And orchid on the 9th? 9th District, Dong Fat's office. Used to be in a building with a silly lobby full of fake orchids, Hui said. He moved after the rumor about the elevators thinking for themselves, and sighed. And Green Lantern Tower 31 we met already, I said. I stood, rolled my shoulders, and felt the city settle on them like a wet coat. We need eyes that aren't ours, I said. We need noise. You want CSU? Hui asked. I want too many alarms and a traffic jam, I said. Call in a fire inspection at Tower 31 and a bomb threat at the post office, and tell CSU we found a thumbprint on the fish sauce nozzle that's the size of a small boat. You want the city to cough, he said, but his eyes were steady. You think the cough will make the foxes show their tails? It always does, I said. And while everyone's choking on the smoke of their own phone calls, we go to the lake and meet a turtle who is a door. He made the calls with the bureaucratic grace of a man who knows which clerk still owed him a favor from 2018. Sirens like silver insects began to bite the air within minutes. Somewhere, someone with a blue suit and a red tie would tell a camera that everything was under control. We left the office, turned left, then left again, then right where the text had told us to, and then 3 rights that made a left, for luck. My car started like a man recovering from a punch and joined the swarm. Saigon? No, the part of the city that still answered to that name when called in a low voice was a grid someone had scribbled on paper and then spilled tea on, and then remembered that tea is also a map. Turtle Lake's roundabout was already becoming a festival of horns. We parked 2 blocks away and threaded on foot through a crowd of young couples and old men and pigeons that had learned the exact geometry of falling bread. North Gate, Hui said, glancing at the landmarks. The lake with its modernist concrete sculpture like an alien lotus, the ring of cafes with their chairs angled toward gossip. At the North Cardinal, a little rusting service gate hung half open, as if someone had taught it manners and it had forgotten. 5 past, I said. My watch ticked. 4:03 p.m. The sky had pulled a sheet of cloud across its shoulders, thinking about night. On my phone, a reply from Lin. Red Dress is arguing about saffron. The men with cabinets are bad at hiding. The post office is a poem with blue tape around it. Do you think she's on our side? Hui asked, still scanning faces the way a man scans his future. I think she's on the side of the city surviving the men who want to own it, I said. Sometimes that overlaps with ours. At 4:05, a boy on a bicycle braked near the North Gate. He was 12, maybe 13. His shirt was a school shirt that had learned to be a rag. He didn't look at us. He put his foot down, reached into his basket, and pulled out a bag of bread with one roll tucked among many. He tore one, threw crumbs to the pigeons, then fed himself and let a roll drop near the gate as if bored by gravity. He pedaled off. We waited. A minute later, an old woman with hair like a cloud you can't remember walked slowly to the same spot. Bending as if picking up litter, she lifted the roll, tucked it into her bag, and shuffled on. Her eyes never touched us. We followed at a distance you could measure in guilt. She crossed to a narrow alley with a shrine at its mouth, a red face of a deity staring out with the kind of patience that is older than the police. She ducked into a courtyard where laundry hung like flags of countries that never agreed. She climbed a staircase that made my knees remember childhood. On the landing, she fumbled with her bag, set it down, adjusted her sandal as if the sandal had wronged her. She left the bag and shuffled away. We were in the bag before her shuffling turned a corner. Inside the bread roll was not a note. It was a fountain pen with a Japanese nib, gold, fine, the exact sort Lynn had smelled in the ledger. The barrel had been hollowed and reassembled by someone whose hobby was patience. Inside the barrel, a micro SD chip, black, the size of a fingernail, and likely more dangerous than any blade smaller than a wish. "Dove delivered," Hui said, respect in his voice like a hush in a temple. "It's not just a copy," I said, weighing the pen. "It's a key." We didn't try to read it there. We were not born yesterday, and even yesterday had better instincts. We took it to a cafe whose owner owed my mother a story. I asked for the upstairs room. She let us in without asking why men with cop shoes were carrying a baguette and a pen like a bomb. Hui's laptop had a slot for secrets. We slid the card in, and the screen blinked to life with a folder structure that was too neat to be innocent. Inside, directories named with the same symbols that dotted the ledger margins: doves, turtles, orchids, lanterns. Each one contained spreadsheets that glowed with numbers like teeth in the dark. But there was one more folder, hidden under an invisible dot, like a shy child behind a leg. Hui smiled without humor. He coaxed it out. "Hello," he said to the file named with the pseudonym watermark we'd seen on the pages. He clicked. Text bloomed notes, commentary, cross-references, the work of a person who had decided to turn city gossip into geometry. There were instructions too, routes, timings, redundancies. There was a page titled Compass. I clicked it because I am not a man who resists doors labeled privacy. The page had my name at the top. "Li Quang," it said. "If you're reading this, the city still has a chance." Hui swore softly, like a man who had discovered his father had been right about the wrong thing. I kept reading. The page was not a love letter. It was a case file about me. My suspension, my drowned tenement, my habits, my stubbornness, the way I pause before I enter rooms, and the way I stare at the ground when I'm thinking as if the ground owes me an apology. It quoted a line I had said to a victim's mother 7 years ago that I had hoped the world had forgotten. It hadn't. "Who wrote this?" Hui asked, awe and anger arguing for the wheel. "The pseudonym," I said. "The pseudonym is a person," he said. "The pseudonym is a mask," I said. "But masks fit real faces." At the bottom, a summons. "Tonight, 9 p.m. Key Con Bridge, under the south span. Come with the ledger. Come alone or with the man who rolls his tie when he's worried." Hui looked at his tie tip. It had an unholy crease where his finger had been. He made a face like a man caught singing in church. And if we don't come? He asked. The last line answered, the city will call someone else. They will come. They will not bring a mirror. You think this is a trap? Hui said. It's worse, I said. It's a test. He picked up his phone. We bring units. We set perimeters. We get men killed whose names will only matter to their families, I said. And we will show the man sending us these messages that we don't understand the rules of his game. He wants us because we're us. If we show up with cavalry, we become them. Hui hated me for a breath. Then he hated the world more. We go, he said. We called no one else. I texted Lin a single word, bridge. Her reply came back, eels. I didn't ask. It wasn't a conversation. I messaged Dr. Mai nothing. I didn't want to invite whatever gods watched over civil servants into this part of the night. I texted Onkoi. If fire sees us there, ask it to look away. He sent me a thumbs up that looked like a man handing you a light in a dark tunnel. Dusk rubbed the city down with a dirty cloth. By 9, Kekon Bridge held up the night like it had a personal stake in the outcome. Beneath the south span, the river's edge made a pocket of shadow where men had done business since the river was a god with an accountant. The cranes that PD owned loomed upstream, their necks like dinosaurs who had learned to eat buildings. We parked in a lot of weeds and quiet. Hui checked his sidearm and his other sidearm and the kindness in his eyes and locked all three behind his ribs. I took the ledger and the pen with the chip and the parts of me I liked least. Under the bridge, 3 men weighted their suits wrong for the mud, their shoes learning things they'd tell no one. A 4th man stood apart. He wore no tie. He wore no worry except in the set of his mouth. He had a face you would trust if you were hurrying and only needed to be wrong for an hour. I knew his face from television. P. Day's lieutenant, the one who'd made a speech about cranes being angels of progress. You brought the book, he said, as if we were exactly on script. I brought the thing that pretends to be a book, I said. He smiled with only his lip, not his teeth. You're the one who sees ghosts, he said. You set fires in buildings that pretend they can't burn, I said. Fire is an honest auditor, he said. It makes everyone the same height. Your boss wants to hold the ledger, I said, so he can say he never held it. My boss wants to bury it under an elevator, he said, and then build 50 floors of amnesia on top. Hui shifted toward the car shadow. The men noticed. They didn't move. Presents lay on the mud like oil. Where's your compass? The lieutenant asked. Ask the river, I said. The men laughed, the kind of laugh that ends in nothing. The lieutenant held out his hand. The book, he said. I handed him the ledger wrapped in plastic. It was heavy with the weight of a city trying to pretend it wasn't complicated. He opened it, like a man opening a child's diary, because he loves the child and wants to know which part he didn't understand. He frowned when he saw the symbols instead of names. This is poetry, he said, disappointed. Poetry that can put your boss in a room with people who forget to bring dessert, I said. He wagged the book like a scold. You think you can scare us with myths? He said. Here is a myth, that the ministry can count beyond 3 without asking permission. You should read the footnotes, a voice said from the dark. We turned. Lin stepped out from a pillar shadow, a shawl around her shoulders like she'd stolen a piece of night, and taught it manners. 2 men I didn't know faded behind her, their hands empty in a way that was not a comfort. You, the lieutenant said, and this time his smile had teeth. Broker. Broken, she corrected. I bring friends to meet friends. You brought cops to a wake, he said. I brought mirrors to a dressing room, she said. You can leave now, or stay and find out you've been wearing your shirt backwards since 2009. He moved unpleasantly fast. His hand chopped toward her throat like the city reaching for a tax it didn't deserve. Hui moved faster. He took the wrist, turned it, and the lieutenant learned a small lesson about bones and leverage. The other men pulled guns with the casual regret of men who had promised their wives they would not do this again. I stood very still in a world that had decided motion was dangerous. Stop, a new voice said from the far dark. It wasn't loud. It was the kind of voice you use when you've forgotten your keys and found them where you left them. The men froze not because of the volume but because of the weight. A figure stepped into the light that had learned to live under the bridge, older than me by 20 years, perhaps 30 if guilt counts double. He had a suit that fit like it had been cut from a government building and glasses that couldn't make him kinder. His hair was the color of an administrative sunset. He carried a cane he did not need or did not want to admit he needed. He smiled at me like a man who had been waiting at a station long after the last train. "Detective Lay," he said. "It's been a while." My mouth went dry. The name from the watermark pseudonym hit me before he said his real one. The pseudonym belonged to a folk-tale figure. Call him the ferryman's account, the one who counts the coins in the mouths of the dead, not to be paid, but to be sure the living understand the price. It had been a joke in footers of memos. It was not a joke now. "They?" I said before I could stop my mouth from reaching back into the past. "Teacher," he nodded, amused and sad. "It's always easier to teach the right student the wrong lesson, and hard to teach the wrong student the right one," he said. "You were the unfair third option, a right student who wanted a better lesson than I had." Hui stepped slightly between us. "You know him?" he asked, without taking his eyes off the men with guns. "I know the shape of the hole he left," I said. "The man, my old boss, the one who had taught me to write reports like stories, because stories have fewer lies in them than numbers tap the ground with his cane. The ledger is a map," he said, "but maps do not work without a traveler." "You used me," I said. "I asked you to be what you already are," he said. "A man who points at the thing everyone pretends not to see." "And what did you pretend not to see?" I asked. "That the ministry prefers ribbon cuttings to indictments," he said. He glanced at the lieutenant with the turned wrist, then at Lin, then at me. I thought I could build a ledger from scraps of truth and then persuade the city to be better by letting the right people read it and be afraid. But fear makes terrible legislation. Hui eased the wrist down. The lieutenant hissed and withdrew like a tide, only to return as a knife an inch out of its sheath. The old man sighed. "We are all here because we believe in the same thing," he said. "The price of progress," the lieutenant said. "Receipts," Lin said. "Debts," I said. "Memory," the old man said softly. "We all believe the city should remember. We disagree about what should be remembered." "And who should do the remembering?" Hui said dryly. A siren coughed above us, the phantom breath of a patrol car that had decided this bridge was not its business. The river lapped like a bored audience. The cranes creaked as the wind pushed opinions through them. "What do you want, Thay?" I asked, anger keeping me steady. "I want you to help me publish part of this and bury part of it," he said. "We will send the pieces that show systemic theft to the Auditor General, and the parts that show men with small knives to the prosecutors who are not for sale this month. And we will hold back the lines that would cause a building to fall on people who can't afford helmets." I manned. You mean the parts that would implicate your friends? Lynn said. Sweet as poison. I mean the parts that would burn a neighborhood to punish one mayor, he said, unflinching. Don't be naive, because it is prettier. You engraved my life into your file, I said. You summoned me with my own habits. You sent me to a hotel with false alarms while starting a fire in a tower. Did you do that? The tower burned because a man who owns cranes does not like the scent of his own oil, he said, a little too quickly. I would not risk a building full of cleaners to teach a councilman irony. The lieutenant laughed once, sharp. You believe him because he reads better than I do, he said. It is the city's favorite mistake. You wanted the book, I said to him. I wanted to stop it from becoming a sermon, he said, because sermons are bad for business. Lynn took a step closer to the water, as if she might step onto it and be surprised when it held. There is a third way, she said. The ledger lives in the light and in the dark at the same time. We hand one copy to the people who count slowly but honestly, and we hand one to the people who count quickly but dangerously, and we keep one. We set the city in competition with itself. Huey rubbed his tie. You want war, he said. I want entropy with guardrails, she said. I want the men who think they own the river to learn how to swim in it. The old man looked at me. You are the compass, he said. Where you point, the next months will go. The city shouldn't ask a tired man with a bad car to be its north, I said. The city never asks the right person, he said. It asks the person who isn't yet bored of being wrong. I looked at the ledger. I thought of Dr. Mai's white room and the emergency strips blinking their little poem. I thought of Ongkoi pulling an alarm and water falling like a choir that had forgotten the words. I thought of Mrs. Nguyen lifting a shelf to reveal the notebook her husband kept because he believed his hand kept better faith than a keyboard. I thought of Tom with coins in his mouth because old stories have long arms. I turned to the river. It was black but not empty. Lights from the banks fell in and came back up, changed. That is what this job is. Throw light into the water and see which color it becomes. You'll both get less than you want, I said to the old man and the lieutenant, and to the parts of myself that wanted simple answers, and you'll both get enough to hate me forever. That was decided already, the lieutenant said. The old man inclined his head. An old schoolboy who had learned to bow to bad ideas as if they were kings. Do it, he said. Do what? Huey asked. He already knew. We'll cut it 3 ways, I said. The core, the flows of money that route through public contracts, goes to Dr. Mai and the Auditor General now, tonight, with enough signatures for them to survive the first phone calls. The vibrant, ugly pieces, the bribe envelopes, and the names of the men who hold them, we leaked to 3 journalists who owe no one, and 1 priest who once turned down a donation because he didn't like the signature. And the dangerous lines, the ones that would turn a district into a riot, we keep, and we make sure the men who think they can outrun a rumor know we have them. The lieutenant's lips sketched a poor excuse for a smile. You think you can hold that line? I think I can hold it long enough to make you sweat through a suit, I said, which is a start. And the ledger itself? He asked. It stays with me, I said, and with the woman at the tea stall who poured me a drink that tasted like old conversations, and with the boy on the bicycle and the old woman with the bread. It stays with the city like a tooth you can't stop tonguing. You are very literary tonight, Lynn said. I'm tired, I said. We moved then, not like a choreographed dance, but like a sidewalk argument that knows how not to fall into the street. Hoy and I backed toward the shadow where my car sulked. Lin's men stayed between us and the lieutenant's guns in a way that made everyone's lawyers nervous. The old man did not move. He looked at the cranes like a grandfather at children who had chosen poorly. At the car, we split the goods under a blanket that smelled like cigarettes, all my sins huddled in cotton. The micro SD copied onto 3 encrypted drives. Hoy pulled from a glove compartment that had never seen gloves. The ledger itself went into a grocery bag with a bunch of Morning Glory and 2 cans of condensed milk on top. No one looks twice at dinner. Before we left, I walked back to the old man. He watched me with the indulgent annoyance of a teacher who knows the bell has rung and his student still has a question. "Why me?" I asked. "It can't be just that you admired my report writing, because once, years ago, when a tenement drowned and the city wanted to blame a pipe, you knocked on every door on that street until someone told you the truth," he said. "You didn't stop when a colonel called. You didn't stop when a TV crew made a different story. You didn't stop when they took your badge. You stopped when you were sure you were wrong, and you published that wrongness like an apology. That is not normal. It is not healthy. It is necessary. There are compliments that feel like a hand on your shoulder. This one felt like a weight added to a backpack that I already wore wrong. I turned away, then turned back, because it is my flaw." "What does the pseudonym mean?" I asked. "Why that name in the watermark?" He smiled. "It is an old joke," he said. "A folk tale about a ferryman who counts the coins in the dead man's mouth, not to be paid, but to make sure no one steals from the river. It means, do not steal from the thing that keeps us alive. We put it on files that we wanted the future to forgive us for." "And will it?" I asked. He looked at the river. "If the future has any sense of humor," we left. At a gas station, because I trust no office building after midnight, I used a public Wi-Fi I had no right to trust and sent the core to Dr. Mai with a subject line that said, "Your choir." Her reply was one word and came in 60 seconds, singing. Hoy sent the ugly pieces to 3 journalists he knew from cases where cameras photographed grief and called it truth. Lin sent a messenger into a church with an envelope and a note that said, "Here is a sin you can hold." We went to the tea stall where the Ledger had first opened its throat for us. The owner looked at the bag and knew better than to ask why dinner was sad. She poured tea. She put the rice cakes down with the solemnity of a sacrament. The Ledger lay between us, black and patient. We were 3, me, Hui, and Lin, now sitting with a book that had learned to breathe. "You know there will be retaliation," Lin said. "It's always retaliation," Hui said, shrugging. "Our job is to make sure the right people feel it." "You believe in right people," she said, not unkind. "I believe in wrong ones," he said. "The other category we invent as needed." My phone buzzed, of course. A new message. A photo of Tower 31's lobby with fire inspectors arguing with a manager who had learned English after money. Another photo, the post office, wrapped in blue tape like a present to bureaucracy. Another, Dr. Mai in a parking lot, hair plastered to her forehead by rain that had decided to make an entrance late, holding a stack of papers to her chest like a baby that had cursed her in a dead language. The caption said, "This is how a city prays." Then a final text, just words. "Good. Now, stop reading me and start writing me." "What does that mean?" Hui asked over my shoulder. "It means the ledger isn't finished," I said. "It means it never is. But it is a." "That's the trouble with books that breathe," Lynn said. "They demand a sequel." We were about to pretend to laugh when two scooters slowed at the end of the alley, their engines a purr I recognized like a scar. The riders wore black raincoats that were less weather and more costume. The one on the back of the closer scooter turned his head as he passed the mouth of the alley, and held my gaze a heartbeat too long. The way he had that morning. "Fan club again," Huey murmured. "They'll try the simple thing next," I said. "Then they'll try the complicated thing. Then they'll try the ancient thing." "What's the ancient thing?" Lynn asked, sipping tea. "They'll try to buy us a house," I said. "They can keep their houses," Huey said. "I have an apartment full of drawings of dragons I'm late to compliment." The rain came in earnest then, as if a choir had finally remembered the verse. The alley filled with the smell of wet fish sauce and tin. The Ledger's leather drank a drop and did not complain. We sat in the sound, letting the day's jaw unclench. I could feel the city around us angry, relieved, indifferent, awake. Somewhere, a councilman would be yelling at a phone. Somewhere, a clerk would be making a copy of a copy of a copy and putting it in a folder named, in her own private code, "Do not let this die." We took the Ledger to a place I will not describe. It wasn't a bank. It wasn't a locker. It was a room that had forgotten its uses so thoroughly, even thieves were bored by it. There was a ceiling fan with no cameras because the fan did not work. There was a table that had been a church pew. Once, we put the Ledger in a box with a tin soldier, a dead moth, and a coin I'd kept since a night on a bridge as a rookie when a drunk had taught me a trick with fate. We closed the box like a mouth. Outside, the rain washed neon into the gutters. Cars made the city's old rhymes. We left to face the domestic war of bedtime with a promise to text me the dragon drawings. Lynn walked with me 2 blocks and then turned, her shawl a second night. She paused under a streetlight as if she were considering becoming a moth. "You think he's right?" she asked. "Which he?" I said. "The one who counts coins," she said. "He's right that memory is a weapon," I said. "He's wrong if he thinks he gets to decide where it points." "And you?" she asked. "I'm the compass," I said, and did not manage to make it sound brave. "Which means I point somewhere, and then I argue with myself about it for a year." She smiled. "Try to point somewhere that scares men who own cranes," she said. "It makes the skyline prettier." "He is mine of fightin' pairs." She disappeared into a taxi that had no business stopping for anyone at this hour. I walked home because walking is the only way to make the city talk straight. On my phone, a new message waited. It was a photo of a boy on a bicycle and an old woman with a bread roll, taken from far away, from an angle you could only get if you were making a habit of invisibility. No caption. None needed. I deleted it, and still it stayed in my head. When I reached my building, the cat from the murder alley sat on the steps as if the city had hired it to check IDs. It flicked its tail, allowed my existence, and returned to whatever philosophy cats study. Upstairs, I stood in my kitchen and listened to the rain count itself on the metal balcony like coins in a dead man's mouth, like little promises that are impossible to spend. On my table, the copies we had made lay under a newspaper whose headline would be obsolete by breakfast. I looked at the watermark name on one of the pages, the old joke, the ferryman's account. I thought of the river. I thought of all the bridges. I thought of the list we'd just forced the city to start writing. The next morning, there would be headlines and denials and a letter from the ministry that would be a love song to process. There would be a priest reading from a pulpit without smiling. There would be men in suits who suddenly remembered other appointments. There would be a contractor whose elevators decided to sing in the wrong key. There would be a tea stall where a woman with arms like bamboo would pour black tea and say nothing new. And there would be me and Hui and Linh and Dr. Mai and Ong Koi and Mrs. Nguyen with her son's drawing on her fridge, and a city that had not learned how to forget properly. On my phone, the last message of the night arrived as if it had been walking and finally found my door. "See?" it said. "Now we can start." I typed back before I could talk myself out of it. We already did. I put the phone face down and let the rain narrate my ceiling until it became sleep. Somewhere under the south span of Ki Kon Bridge, the river kept the receipt. Somewhere, in a room without a working fan, a black ledger breathed and did not tell anyone how many pages it would need. The city, which owes everything, turned in its bed and dreamed of extinctions it would delay and inventions it would deny, and a compass that would never point due north, because due north is for maps, not for streets with frogs in their drains and gods in their electric boxes. When the dream was done, morning would come like it always does here, with scooters like shy meteors and rain pretending to be mercy. And I would get up, and I would read what had been written, and I would start writing again, because the ledger wasn't a book, and it wasn't a bomb, and it wasn't a myth. It was the city, remembering itself. When I lifted it, the statues exhaled again, and the air didn't move and everything else did. The three pieces hummed at one another a low, complicated chord like a door taking off its hinges. "It will fight," Vey said, as if we were making stew, and he was warning me about a bone I might not see until I bit down. "The wall. It will try to teach us regret." "I am tired," Kale said quietly, "of lessons that come with rope." "We will need a place," I said, holding the three in my two hands like a woman who has been given a basket full of eggs that are more important than breakfast. "A place to break a heart and not let the pieces run back to what they were doing before." "Dunta." "The hollow in the moon," Kale said. He said it as if he had been keeping the idea the way you keep a knife hidden in the hem of your coat, not because you intend violence, but because the world is badly sewn. It is a mouth. It wants to speak. We will feed it something better than love. "What?" I asked, and I felt my mouth go dry and wet at once. "Is better than love?" "Love unrationed," he said. "Love that refuses to be counted. Love that returns to sender and then refuses to be the sender or the receiver. Love that becomes a place instead of a tally." I looked at him. I did not ration it. I let myself feel what I felt, and what I felt was not trust exactly and not disbelief exactly, but a decision to cross a room toward a person who might hurt me, because the room needed crossing, and because I had already been hurt by the furniture we call safety. "When?" I said, because someone had to be sensible enough to arrange the impossible into steps. "Do we go to the moon?" "When the veil breathes in," Vey answered, because he is the kind of man who knows the timing of things even kings pretend are accidents. "When the wall thinks it is not being watched. When children in beech woods are making up songs to sing while they fetch water." "That is soon," I said. "It is always soon," Kale said, and then he surprised me. He touched my cheek, not the way a man touches a woman in a story when he wants to leave fingerprints, the way a king touches his own face in a mirror when he has decided to meet himself. His hand was warm and the ring did not look at me. "Elowen," he said, and he made my name into a place I might live in for a while without asking whether it had a roof. "Thank you." "For what?" I asked, and the charm warmed not with knowledge but with approval, which is a different weight and a different light, and something I had not been given often enough to recognize quickly. "For not teaching me your ration," he said, "for spending," and a call. Vey made a sound like a man being polite to an emotion he had been taught to fold, not wear. "We should hurry," he said. "I hear a priest's rope in my teeth. The dawn-born will not forgive being turned back at our gate. They will try to pull the veil's hem when we climb for its mouth." We moved. The stag stamped and tossed its script into the air. One word I did not know, and one I did. Now. The shards pulsed against my skin where I had tucked them, one beneath the cord of my charm, one in the hollow of my other hand, one in a pocket I had not known this dress possessed, as if the seamstress had believed in emergencies. We crossed a courtyard where the shadows hung like laundry. We entered a stair that turned and did not finish turning. We climbed into a tower that had no top until it did. At the highest platform, there was a door that opened onto nothing. Beyond, the sky carried its hollowed moon like a bowl held by a tired god. "Can we reach it?" I asked. Foolish and not foolish. Glome had taught me to stop asking the kind of questions that assume doors are for walls. "We can call it," Cale said. "It will lower its mouth if we sing with the right uncounted notes." "Names?" I asked. "Or mercies? Or both?" he said. "And something else you brought without knowing." "What's that?" I asked. And before he could answer, the wind struck us with a phrase that tasted of rope-sung names and new iron. The dawn-born had not gone home to rethink. They had gone around to the side of a thing they did not understand and decided to push from there. The veil shivered. The hollow in the moon flickered. The shards in my hands woke and knocked at my bones as if wanting to be let out to play at last. Vey took his place at the edge, his hands held as if ready to argue in the language of weather. Cale looked at me and did not need to say anything, and so said the one thing that is better than instruction. "Listen," he said. I did, not to the ropes, not to the priests, not to the king, not to my own fear. I listened to the children at the beech trees making up a song to go fetch water, and to my mother's thumb drawing a circle on my brow, and to the river making space for a fox, and then for me, and to a creature in drowned light, saying its name as if it had never believed it could again, and to a cathedral admitting it had kept a book too carefully, and to a wall that had fed for too long, and was about to be made very hungry, in a way that would not kill the children in their beds. I opened my mouth, I sang. Not beautiful. True. The moon tipped. The hollow came down like a bowl from a high shelf, placed in a child's careful hands. Behind us, the veil rattled like 1,000 thin things, remembering they could be strings, not bars. Vey threw night-like water on a fire, and the fire became steam, and the steam decided it was fog and went home. The ropes tried to bite. The shadows bit back. I sang again. The uncounted notes, the ones my habit would have saved for later, and which now would never be saved by me again. Cale's hand found mine. The shards beat once, twice, 3 times, and in their rhythm I heard a heart that had eaten love for too long and was about to be fed something it could not digest and would have to become instead. "Ready?" he asked, and his voice was not a command and not a request. It was an invitation and a vow with its hands open, not clenched. "Yes," I said, and the charm at my throat lay against skin and did not argue at all.